The blue lights on the bridge of the UES Liberty flashed red as the emergency message came through. Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the center of the command deck, watching his officers rush to their stations. The ship was humanity's pride, built with the best technology Earth could offer. But right now, it felt very small compared to what was coming. "Admiral, we have an incoming transmission from unknown alien vessels," said Captain Lisa Hamilton. She was Earth's best diplomat, but her voice carried worry. "The signal is coming through on all frequencies." "They want us to listen," Morrison nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The bridge went dark for a moment. Then a figure appeared in the air above them. It was tall, made of what looked like living crystal, and its voice echoed through the ship like breaking glass. The translator worked quickly, turning alien words into English. "I am Executor Vex of the Galactic Tribute Council," the being said. Its crystal face showed no emotion. "We speak to the species known as human. You have achieved travel between stars. This means you must now follow our laws." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. Humanity had only been traveling to other worlds for 40 years. They had built colonies around Mars, Jupiter, and even reached the nearby star systems. But they had always known this day might come, the day they met someone bigger and stronger than them. "Your species will pay tribute to the Council," Vex continued. "Every year you will give us 30% of everything you make. Your food, your machines, your ships, your knowledge. In return, we will protect you and allow you to trade with other worlds." General Roy Patterson, who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward. His face was red with anger. 30%? That's not protection money. That's robbery. Dr. Amy Foster was already pulling up data on her computer. She was the smartest person Morrison knew when it came to alien life. Her screen showed pictures of dead worlds, empty space where planets used to be. "Admiral, look at this. The Council doesn't make empty threats. The Zilani people said no 20 years ago. Their whole planet is gone now, just dust and rocks." Morrison studied the images. Entire civilizations wiped out because they refused to pay. Cities turned to glass, millions of people dead. The Council had been doing this for 10,000 years, and no one had ever stopped them. Commander Nick Baker was the youngest officer on the bridge, but his mind worked faster than most computers. "Admiral, I've been reading their data about us. They think they know how humans will react, but they've made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" Morrison asked. "They've studied every other species they've conquered. All of them followed the same pattern. When faced with a choice between slavery and death, they chose slavery. The Council expects us to do the same thing." Captain Lisa Hamilton was reading through the Council's message again. "They're giving us 24 hours to respond. After that, they'll send their war fleet." Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people, the best humanity had to offer. They had families back on Earth, dreams for the future, hopes for their children. The easy choice would be to pay the tribute, give the Council what they wanted, and hope for the best. But Jake Morrison had not become admiral by making easy choices. "How big is their fleet?" he asked. Dr. Foster pulled up more data. 12 ships in the advance group. "But Admiral, each one is larger than our biggest vessel. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. If they wanted to destroy Earth tomorrow, we couldn't stop them." "And how many human ships do we have?" Morrison continued. 43 combat vessels spread across all our colonies," General Patterson answered. "But Admiral, even if we brought them all together, we'd be outgunned 10 to 1. Morrison walked to the large window that looked out into space. Stars stretched in every direction, beautiful and endless. Somewhere out there, the Council's fleet was waiting for humanity's answer. They probably expected humans to beg, to offer deals, to try to bargain for better terms. They had no idea what they were dealing with. "Commander Baker," Morrison said, still looking at the stars, "you said the Council made a mistake. Tell me more." Baker pulled up his research. "Every species they've conquered has the same basic psychology. When threatened with extinction, they choose survival over freedom. It's logical, it makes sense. But humans are different. How different? We're the only species that ever fought wars we knew we couldn't win just because we believed we were right. We're the only species that chose to explore space even when it was dangerous and expensive. We're the only species that looks at impossible odds and says, "Let's try anyway." Dr. Foster nodded slowly. The Council's records show they've never encountered a species like us. Every other race they've met thinks survival is the most important thing. But humans have something else that matters more. What's that? General Patterson asked. Pride. Morrison said quietly. The right to make our own choices. The right to say no. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what the Admiral was thinking. The Council expected humanity to surrender just like everyone else had. They were waiting for Earth to send a message accepting their terms, begging for mercy, offering whatever deal might save human lives. Morrison turned back to his crew. His decision was made. Prepare a response transmission, he ordered. Single word, broadcast on all frequencies. Maximum power. I want every ship, every station, every alien in this part of the galaxy to hear humanity's answer. Captain Hamilton's fingers moved over her controls, ready to transmit, Admiral. What's the message? Morrison smiled for the first time since the crisis began. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had just made the most important decision in human history. No. The word no burst across space with more power than any human message had ever carried. The UES Liberty's transmitters pushed the signal far beyond normal range, using every bit of energy the ship could spare. Within minutes, the simple word reached alien listening posts scattered across dozens of star systems. Captain Lisa Hamilton watched her communication board light up like a Christmas tree. Admiral, the signal is bouncing off relay stations everywhere. Species we've never even heard of are picking up our transmission. Admiral Morrison stood perfectly still, watching the display screens show their message spreading across the galaxy. One word, traveling at the speed of light, carrying humanity's answer to 10,000 years of galactic bullying on the Council's flagship. Executor Vex received the human response and processed it through the ship's translation computers 3 times. The crystal being's form flickered with what might have been confusion. In all of Vex's long life, spanning several human lifetimes, no species had ever responded to the tribute demand with such simplicity. Clarification required, Vex transmitted back to the UES Liberty. Species human appears to have sent incorrect message. Compliance with tribute demand is not optional. Response must be acknowledgement of terms and payment schedule. Admiral Morrison looked at Captain Hamilton. Send the same message again. Sir? Hamilton asked. You heard me. Same word, same power, same transmission. Hamilton's fingers moved across her controls. Once again, the word no shot across space toward the Council fleet. Commander Helen Ross was monitoring communications from her position on the UES Defiance, stationed near the outer colonies. Her job was to listen to alien chatter and figure out what it meant. What she heard in the hours after humanity's response surprised her more than anything in her 15-year career. Admiral Morrison, she reported over the secure channel, you need to hear this. I'm picking up transmissions from tributary species all across this sector. They're talking about us. Morrison authorized the connection. Ross's voice came through clearly despite the distance. Sir, there's a species called the Kethran about 30 light-years from here. They've been paying tribute to the Council for over 200 years. Their communication just said, and I quote, "The humans said what?" Similar reports came in from across human space. Captain Steve Murphy, patrolling near the Centauri colonies, intercepted messages from the Yelani Trade Federation. Lieutenant Karen White at Luna Station recorded conversations between the Mordek mining guilds. All of them were asking the same question in different languages. What did no mean? Dr. Amy Foster was working through the night, analyzing every piece of data they could gather about the Council's tributary species. What she found painted a picture of a galaxy that had forgotten the meaning of the word that humans had just broadcast to everyone. Admiral, she reported, I've been studying the historical records we've collected. Not one species in the Council's database has ever refused the tribute demand. Not one. Some tried to negotiate for lower percentages. Some offered alternative forms of payment. But every single species that survived eventually said yes. General Roy Patterson was reading reports from human colonies across 3 star systems. The Outer Rim settlements are asking for orders, sir. Do they evacuate? Do they prepare for attack? What do we tell them? Morrison thought about this. Human. Colonies were spread across dozens of worlds now. Families had built lives in places their grandparents had only dreamed about. Children were growing up under alien suns, thinking of distant planets as home. The easy thing would be to tell them to run, to hide, to hope the Council forgot about them. But Jake Morrison had not spent 30 years in space making easy decisions. Tell them to continue normal operations, he ordered. No evacuations. Number. Panic. If the Council wants to talk, they know where to find us. This decision rippled across human space and beyond. Within hours, alien intelligence services were reporting something unprecedented. A species facing certain destruction was going about its normal business. Executor Vex convened an emergency meeting with the other Council leaders, the insectoid. Rakhth Executor's antennae twitched with agitation as it spoke through the translation system. This behavior pattern is not in our databases, Rakhth clicked. Human response suggests either complete ignorance of consequences or psychological abnormality requiring study. Executor Thane, whose aquatic species had helped found the Council 10,000 years ago, studied the data streams flowing through a conference chamber. Their language translation appears accurate. They understand our demands. They understand the consequences of refusal, yet they persist in non-compliance. What the Council leaders didn't understand was that their very confusion was being broadcast across the galaxy. Species that had paid tribute for centuries were listening to the Council's internal communications and hearing something they had never heard before. Uncertainty. Lieutenant White reported this development to Admiral Morrison. Sir, the Council's own communications show they don't know what to do with us. They keep using phrases that translate roughly to behavioral anomaly and requires further study. Commander Nick Baker was deep in analysis of the Council's historical patterns. What he found changed everything about how humanity understood their situation. Admiral, I've been studying every Council conquest for the past 1,000 years. Their standard procedure is simple: make the demand, receive submission, establish tribute collection. They've never had to develop protocols for actual resistance. This was the key insight that Dr. Foster had been searching for. Nick's right, Admiral. The Council isn't a military empire built on conquest. They're tax collectors who've never met anyone who refused to pay. Captain Murphy, monitoring the edge of human space, reported the Council fleet's movements. Admiral, they're not advancing toward our colonies. They're holding position and sending out scout ships. It's like they're trying to figure out what we're going to do next. Morrison realized that humanity had accidentally discovered the Council's greatest weakness. They had no experience fighting anyone who actually wanted to fight back for 10,000 years. The Council had built their power on a simple assumption. Every intelligent species would choose survival over freedom when faced with overwhelming force. They had ships that could destroy planets, technology that could wipe out entire civilizations, and the demonstrated willingness to use both. But they had never encountered humans. Admiral Morrison watched the tactical displays, showing both human and Council fleet positions. The alien ships were more advanced, more powerful, and more numerous. By every logical measure, humanity was facing certain defeat, but as Commander Baker had pointed out, humans had never been particularly logical when it came to impossible fights. Morrison smiled as he prepared his next message to the Council. It would be longer than one word this time, but the meaning would be just as clear. Executor Vex, he transmitted. Humanity's position remains unchanged. We do not pay tribute to anyone. If you wish to discuss trade agreements between equals, we are willing to listen. If you wish to continue making threats, you are wasting both our time and yours. The message shot across space toward the Council fleet. carrying with it something the galaxy hadn't seen in 10,000 years, the possibility that someone might actually say no to the Council and mean it. The Council's war fleet reached the edge of human space 3 days after receiving humanity's refusal. 12 massive ships, each one larger than Earth's biggest space station, moved into position around the outer planets of the solar system. Their weapons could turn entire moons into dust. Their shields could stop anything humans had ever built. Executor Vex expected to find humans in complete panic. Every other species the Council had encountered would be sending desperate messages. By now, they would beg for mercy, offer counterproposals, or at least show some sign that they understood they were about to die instead. The Council fleet found something impossible to understand. Captain Ben Taylor commanded the defense platform orbiting Mars. When his sensors detected the alien ships, he reported to Admiral Morrison with the same calm voice he used for routine supply deliveries. Admiral, Council fleet is holding position at the system's edge. 12 vessels, unknown weapon types, no immediate threat to Mars operations. What are your orders? Morrison's reply came back just as calmly. Continue normal operations, Captain. If they want to talk, they know how to reach us. This response traveled through space and reached the Council fleet within minutes. Executor Vex processed the human communication and found it completely outside every behavioral pattern in the Council's databases. The humans were not preparing for battle. They were not evacuating their colonies. They were not even acknowledging that the most powerful military force in the galaxy was pointing weapons at their home system. On the mining station around Jupiter, work crews continued their shifts. The new orbital habitat under construction kept building according to schedule. Cargo ships moved between planets carrying supplies and people, just like they did every day. Lieutenant Karen White monitored alien communications from her post on Luna Station. What she heard in the Council's internal transmissions made her realize that humanity had stumbled into something unprecedented. Admiral Morrison, she reported, the Council fleet is broadcasting on secured channels. They're not talking about attack plans or target priorities. They're asking each other what's wrong with us. The exact translation came through the computers as a series of questions that revealed the depth of Council confusion. Why do the humans continue normal activities? Do they not understand the threat? Are they mentally defective? Should we send medical teams? Dr. Amy Foster was conducting her own analysis of the situation from her laboratory on Earth. She had been studying every piece of information about the Council that humans had gathered over the past 40 years of space travel. What she discovered changed everything they thought they knew about their enemy. Admiral, the Council's historical records show something important. They've only fought 17 actual wars in 10,000 years. Every other conquest was accomplished through intimidation alone. Morrison studied the data Foster had compiled. 17 wars out of how many conquests? Over 3,000. Species have joined the Council's tribute system. That means less than 1% of their conquests required actual fighting. General Roy Patterson joined the conversation from his command post. So they're not really a military empire. They're more like cosmic bullies who've never met anyone willing to fight back. This realization spread through the human command structure like wildfire. Commander Helen Ross, monitoring from the UES Defiance, confirmed the pattern. Admiral, I've been analyzing the Council fleet movements. They're not positioning for attack. They're positioning for intimidation. Their formation is designed to look scary, not to fight efficiently. Major Chris Johnson was leading a reconnaissance mission near the Council fleet. His report added another piece to the puzzle. Sir, their ships are beautiful, but they're not built for combat, they're built for show. All that size and power is meant to make other species surrender without fighting. Captain Steve Murphy, commanding a patrol near Neptune, made an even more important observation. Admiral, look at their crew numbers. These ships are massive, but they're not carrying many people. I think most of their war fleet is automated systems designed to look threatening. Meanwhile, on the Council flagship, Executor Vex was discovering that the Council's intelligence about humans was completely wrong. They had studied human expansion into space and seen a species that spread quickly across multiple star systems. The Council assumed this meant humans were driven by the same survival instincts as every other species they had encountered. They were wrong. Executor Thane, reviewing the data from their cultural analysis teams, made a disturbing discovery. The humans appear to value abstract concepts over survival. Their historical records show they frequently chose death over submission to superior forces. This was information the Council had never needed to consider before. Every species they had conquered was fundamentally rational. When faced with certain death, they chose to live under Council rule instead. It was logical, sensible, and predictable. Humans were not logical, sensible, or predictable. Commander Nick Baker was working through the strategic implications of what they had learned. Admiral, the Council's entire system is built on the assumption that every species thinks the same way. They can't process the idea that we might actually prefer to fight and lose rather than surrender and live. Dr. Foster's psychological analysis confirmed Baker's assessment. Their own records show they've never encountered a species that would choose principle over survival. They literally don't have protocols for dealing with us. This mutual misunderstanding was creating a situation that neither side had expected. The Council thought they were dealing with a species that was either insane or too stupid to understand. The consequences of refusal. Humans were discovering that the most feared military force in the galaxy had never actually fought anyone who wanted to fight back. Admiral Morrison reviewed all the intelligence reports and came to a conclusion that surprised even him. They're more afraid of us than we are of them. Sir? Captain Hamilton asked. Think about it. They've built their entire empire on the idea that overwhelming force guarantees submission. We've just proved that idea wrong. For the first time in 10,000 years, they're facing an enemy that expects to fight. Lieutenant White intercepted more Council communications that confirmed Morrison's assessment. Admiral, they're requesting reinforcements from their home systems, not for attack purposes but for defense. They think we might be planning to invade them. The irony of the situation was not lost on anyone in the human command structure. The galaxy's most powerful empire was asking for help to defend against a species that had been traveling between stars for less than 50 years. General Patterson summed up the situation perfectly. We came out here expecting to fight for our survival. Instead, we've accidentally started a revolution just by saying no. Captain Taylor, still monitoring the Council fleet from Mars orbit, reported their latest movement. Admiral, they're pulling back to a more defensive formation. I don't think they know what to do with us. Morrison looked at the strategic display showing both fleets. The Council ships were larger, more advanced, and theoretically capable of destroying every human colony. The human fleet was smaller, newer, and had never faced anything like this before, but only one side was paralyzed by uncertainty. They're waiting for us to act like every other species they've conquered, Morrison realized. But we're not every other species. We're humans. And humans don't surrender just because someone tells them to. The Council fleet continued to hold position at the edge of human space, waiting for humanity to show some sign of normal behavior. The humans continued their daily activities, refusing to acknowledge that anything unusual was happening. Neither side understood that they were witnessing the beginning of the end of the Council's 10,000-year reign over the galaxy. The standoff entered its fourth day with neither side making any aggressive moves. The Council fleet remained at the edge of human space, waiting for something that would never come. Humanity continued its normal activities, refusing to behave like a conquered species. But underneath this calm surface, both sides were learning truths that would change the galaxy forever. Dr. Amy Foster had not slept in 3 days. Her team was working around the clock, analyzing every piece of data about the Council they could find. What they discovered made her call Admiral Morrison with shaking hands. Admiral, you need to see this immediately. We've been completely wrong about the Council. Morrison arrived at Foster's laboratory within the hour. She had filled 3 walls with displays showing Council records, battle reports, and conquest histories spanning 10,000 years. Admiral, look at these numbers. The Council claims to have conquered over 3,000 species. But when you examine their actual military records, something doesn't add up. Foster pointed to a chart showing Council fleet movements over the centuries. They have 12 ships in our system right now. That's their entire mobile war fleet. 12 ships. To control a galaxy with millions of inhabited worlds. Morrison studied the data. That's impossible. How do they maintain control with so few ships? They don't, Foster replied. They don't need to. Look at this pattern. She pulled up records of the Council's last 50 conquests. Each one followed the same process: demand tribute, receive immediate surrender, collect payment. No battles, no resistance. No military action required. Commander Nick Baker joined the briefing and added his own analysis. Admiral, I've been studying their ship designs. These vessels aren't built for war. They're built for psychological impact. Everything about them is designed to look terrifying and unstoppable. Captain Lisa Hamilton was reviewing diplomatic records from across the galaxy. Sir, I've been analyzing communications between tributary species. None of them have ever seen the Council actually fight. They all surrendered based on reputation and fear. The truth was becoming clear. The Council was not a military empire. It was the galaxy's most successful protection racket, built on 10,000 years of carefully maintained fear. Meanwhile, on the Council flagship, Executor Vex was facing a crisis that no Council leader had ever encountered. The humans refused to follow any known pattern of behavior. Worse, other species were beginning to notice. Executor Thane's report to the Emergency Council session contained information that terrified the leadership more than any military threat ever could. 17 tributary species have sent private communications asking about the human situation. The Kethrans specifically asked why the humans have not been destroyed if they refuse tribute. The Mordak mining guilds are questioning whether tribute payment is truly necessary for survival. This was the Council's worst nightmare. For 10,000 years, their power had depended on every species believing that resistance meant certain death. If that belief cracked, the entire system would collapse. Lieutenant Kyron White intercepted Council communications that revealed the depth of their panic. Admiral Morrison, they're not debating how to attack us. They're debating whether they can attack us without exposing their weaknesses to the rest of the galaxy. Captain Steve Murphy was monitoring from his position near the Council fleet. His observations confirmed what humanity was beginning to understand. Sir, I've been watching their ships for days now. They've never gone to battle stations. They've never powered up weapon systems. I'm not even sure they know how to fight. General Roy Patterson compiled a tactical assessment that shocked the entire human command structure. Admiral, based on our observations, I believe the Council fleet is completely unprepared for actual combat. Their ships are impressive, but they're not military vessels in any real sense. The revelation went deeper than anyone had imagined. Dr. Foster's research teams had accessed historical records that painted a picture of a galaxy living in fear of an enemy that had never truly existed. Admiral, the Council's last real military action was over 800 years ago. Since then, every conquest has been accomplished through intimidation alone. They've forgotten how to fight because they've never needed to learn. This information was spreading through human space and beyond. Captain Ben Taylor, still commanding the Mars Defense Platform, reported increased alien communications traffic throughout the system. Admiral, we're picking up transmissions from at least 20 different species. Word is getting out that the Council has been sitting in our system for 4 days without taking any action. Commander Helen Ross added her own intelligence report. Sir, tributary species across this entire sector are asking questions they've never asked before. If the Council can't immediately destroy a species that refuses tribute, what does that say about Council power? The answer to that question was becoming obvious to everyone except the Council itself. Morrison called a conference with his senior staff to discuss what they had learned. The implications were staggering. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not facing the galaxy's supreme military power. We're facing a government that's been bluffing for 10,000 years. The question is, What do we do with this information? Major Chris Johnson had been conducting reconnaissance missions near the Council fleet for days. His report added the final piece to the puzzle. Admiral, their ships are beautiful and advanced, but they're not armed for ship-to-ship combat. Their weapons appear designed for orbital bombardment of planets that can't fight back. Dr. Foster confirmed Johnson's assessment. That fits the pattern perfectly. The Council never fights space battles. They threaten to destroy planets, wait for surrender, then collect tribute. They've never needed weapons designed to fight other spacecraft. Commander Baker synthesized all the intelligence into a comprehensive analysis. Admiral, the Council's entire military doctrine is based on fighting enemies that have already given up. They've never developed tactics for engaging an opponent that shoots back. This realization transformed humanity's understanding of their situation. They were not facing an unstoppable military force. They were facing a government whose power existed only as long as nobody called their bluff. Admiral Morrison made the decision that would change galactic history. Send a message to every human colony, every human ship, every human outpost in known space. Tell them the truth about the Council. Then broadcast that same message on all alien frequencies. Captain Hamilton prepared the transmission. What's the message, Admiral? Morrison looked at the displays showing the Council fleet. Still holding position, still waiting for humanity to surrender like every other species before them. Tell them that the Emperor has no clothes? The Council's power exists only because people believe in it. We don't believe. And now everyone will know why. The message that went out across the galaxy was simple and devastating. Humanity shared every piece of intelligence they had gathered about the Council's true nature, the psychological warfare, the inflated reputation, the complete lack of actual military capability. Most importantly, they shared the truth that changed everything. The Council had never fought a real war because they had never needed to. Every species had surrendered before the first shot was fired. Lieutenant White monitored the immediate response. Admiral, we're getting communications from species across 12 star systems. They're all asking the same question. If the Council has never actually fought anyone, what happens when someone fights back? Morrison smiled as he watched the Council fleet begin to slowly retreat from human space. They weren't leaving because they had accomplished their mission. They were leaving because staying would expose their weakness to the entire galaxy. I guess we're about to find out, Morrison said, but I think we already know the answer. The Council had built their empire on fear. Humanity had just proven that fear was all they really had. 6 months after humanity's simple no echoed across the galaxy, the universe looked completely different. The Council fleet had quietly withdrawn from human space, but the damage to their reputation was already spreading like wildfire through every star system. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, reading reports that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. What had started as humanity's refusal to pay tribute had become something much larger, the beginning of the end for the Council's 10,000-year rule. Captain Ben Taylor was now commanding a diplomatic mission to the Zephyrian colonies. 40 light-years from Earth, his latest report showed how quickly things were changing across the galaxy. Admiral, the Zephyrians are asking if our protection offer is real. They've been paying tribute to the Council for 300 years, but they want to know if humans will actually defend them if the Council comes back. Morrison had authorized the first of what would become known as the Terra Accords, mutual defense agreements with any species willing to reject Council tribute. The terms were simple: no tribute payments, no surrender of sovereignty, just mutual cooperation between free peoples. The response had been overwhelming. Commander Helen Ross was coordinating humanitarian missions from her new post as head of the Terran Relief Organization. Her ships carried medical supplies, food, and technology to worlds that had been drained by centuries of tribute payments. Admiral, we've got 17 species that have formally requested Terra Accord membership. The Kethran delegation is arriving next week. They're bringing detailed intelligence about Council operations in their sector. Dr. Amy Foster had been traveling across the galaxy, documenting what they found on worlds that had been paying tribute for generations. Her reports painted a picture of systematic economic exploitation that had kept entire civilizations in poverty. The Council wasn't just collecting tribute, she explained to Morrison during one of their regular briefings. They were deliberately keeping tributary species weak. No advanced technology, no military development, no economic growth that might lead to independence. This discovery explained why the Council had been so shocked by humanity's response. Every other species they encountered had been deliberately kept too weak to resist. Humans had developed their technology and military capabilities in isolation, without Council interference. Lieutenant Karen White, now Admiral White and Commander of the Terran Defense Coalition, was coordinating the defense of 43 star systems that had rejected Council rule. Her fleet included ships from 12 different species, all working together under human leadership. The beautiful thing about this, she reported to Morrison, is that we're not trying to build an empire. We're just proving that the Council's protection isn't necessary. The Council's attempts to reassert control had been pathetic. Executor Vex had sent diplomatic messages to several Terra Accord members, offering reduced tribute rates in exchange for renewed loyalty. When that failed, the Council had tried to impose economic sanctions. The sanctions had backfired spectacularly. Captain Steve Murphy was leading trade missions between Terra Accord worlds, helping them build economic relationships that didn't depend on Council approval. What he found was a galaxy hungry for real cooperation. Admiral, the trading networks we're building are already more profitable than anything the tributary species had under Council rule. Turns out the galaxy is full of resources and ideas when people are free to trade fairly. The Council's final attempt to stop the growing rebellion had been their biggest mistake. They had sent their fleet to the Mordic mining worlds, demanding immediate payment of back tribute, plus penalties for their association with humans. The Mordak had sent a simple message in response. No. When the Council fleet arrived at Mordic space, they found something that terrified them more than any military force could. They found human ships waiting for them. Major Chris Johnson had been commanding the Terran Defense Force squadron that responded to the Mordak crisis. His report to Morrison showed how completely the balance of power had shifted. Admiral, the Council fleet took one look at our ships and retreated without firing a shot. They knew that attacking us would mean admitting to the entire galaxy that they'd never been as powerful as they claimed. The incident at Morduck became known as the day the Council blinked. Within weeks, 20 more species had formally rejected tribute payments. The Council's empire began collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. General Roy Patterson was now overseeing the integration of former tributary worlds into the Terra Accord defense network. His assessment of the situation was simple and direct. We're not conquering these worlds, Admiral. We're liberating them, and they're liberating themselves. All we did was show them it was possible. The transformation wasn't just political. It was psychological. Species that had lived in fear for centuries were rediscovering what it meant to make their own choices. Art, literature, and technology began flourishing on worlds that had been stagnant for generations under Council rule. Dr. Foster documented this cultural renaissance in her reports. Admiral, we're seeing an explosion of creativity and innovation across Terra Accord space. These civilizations were never inferior to the Council. They were just never allowed to show their potential. The Council still existed, still controlled their core worlds, still maintained their impressive fleets, but they were no longer the supreme power in the galaxy. They had become just another government, trying to hold on to relevance in a universe that was moving beyond them. Executor Vex made one final attempt to negotiate with humanity. The message arrived at Admiral Morrison's office 6 months after the crisis began. Admiral Morrison, the Council offers revised terms. Humanity may remain exempt from tribute in exchange for non-interference with Council operations in other sectors. Morrison's response was broadcast across the galaxy on all frequencies. The Council's permission is not required for freedom. Any species that chooses liberty over tribute will find humanity ready to stand with them. The message was heard by billions of beings across thousands of worlds. It was translated into hundreds of languages. It was discussed in council chambers, broadcast on news networks, and whispered in secret meetings on tributary worlds still under council control, but most importantly, it was understood. Captain Lisa Hamilton, now serving as humanity's ambassador to the growing Terra Accord, delivered the final assessment of their situation during the first Galactic Freedom Council meeting. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all descriptions," she said to the assembled representatives of 67 free worlds, "we have learned something important. The choice was never between tribute and annihilation. The choice was always between submission and the possibility of something better." Admiral Morrison watched the proceedings from Earth, knowing that humanity had accomplished something unprecedented. They had not conquered the galaxy. They had not destroyed the Council. They had done something far more powerful and lasting. They had shown the galaxy that no was always an option. The Terra Accords grew every month. New species joined the alliance, bringing their own knowledge, culture, and capabilities. Trade flourished, technology advanced. Art and literature spread between worlds. The galaxy was free, and it had all started with the simplest word in human vocabulary, the right to refuse.